Welcome, welcome. Here we are again for our side quest. This isn't our main read for right now. This will be our side quest, and moving forward, I think this will be the new format. Most of you already know I've been kind of voicing this all along anyway, a little bit. But we'll be live streaming our next book, Ophiel's Art and Practice of Talismanic Magic. And this one here we will do on the side. Hey, be nice. We'll do it on the side in a, like I said, kind of a side quest type way where at least a couple times a week I will upload just regular old-fashioned videos like those first ones for Ophiel's Art and Practice of the Occult of whatever our side quest book will be. Right now it's going to be Miyamoto Musashi's Book of Five Rings. Maybe you've read this before, maybe you haven't. This is great. This book is really great. A classic text on the Japanese way of the sword. Here with me, your favorite study buddy, Jay Baldwin, with a feisty cat here in my lap. And another one fast asleep. How are you today? Just waking up from being fast asleep yourself? Did you have a good nap? What did you dream? Pop it in the comments. What were your dreams? Go ahead, tell me. I don't care. I don't care how crazy it sounds. I don't care. Let's hear it. No judgment on my end. Now, don't ask me what it means. I can't tell you that part, but share them with me. I'm happy to hear them. All right, anyway. So here we are for our side quest. Book of Five Rings. Now, this particular book is, well, you're going to find that it is very, how do I want to say, very good. It's very hand in hand. You're so funny. It's very hand in hand with magical practice. You'll see. You'll see. Which is why I think it'll be fun to do some of these types of books as the side quests. Because you can just, I'll throw them in the playlist, you can come back, whatever, listen to it later in life, whenever you come back. Just be like, hey, oh yeah, I remember he loaded all those up there. I want to check that out. Well, that'll be there. So we'll begin, because this one is one of those ones that starts with the intro, preface, all of that, and you kind of got to get through it before you start getting to the real good stuff. This one also has a second book at the Book of Family Tradition on the Art of War by Yagyu Menonori. That's my best try. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. Anybody who shares that name. So here we are, and if anybody would be interested in hopping into that one, just let me know. I'm not against it. This one's a pretty fast going one anyway. Okay. How do I want a clipper? Just probably use the arms on this one. Cool. Oh, nice. Very good. Okay, everyone, welcome. We'll bust these out, these intro spots, and then you're gonna just really love Translator's Preface. The Japanese word shinken, actually I think it's shinken, means real sword, but it is now more generally used in a metaphorical sense. In common parlance, to do something with a real sword means to do it with utmost earnestness. To have an attitude proper to a real sword means to be deadly serious. Shinken, shobu, literally a contest with real swords, means something done in deadly earnest. This molecule of linguistic anthropology hints at a very good reason why the Japanese are as persistent and skilled as they are at survival and adaptation. Through centuries of cultural training under the martial rule of the samurai, the Japanese are generally able to experience and address virtually anything as a life and death situation. This book shows you how to do it. Okay, might go about it like that. Kind of like using those plastic ones a little more. What did I say? Is it Happy Wednesday? Happy Wednesday, everyone. I hope it's just what you were intending it to be. Translator's introduction. Isn't that what we just did? The Book of Five Rings and the Book of Family Traditions on the Art of War are two of the most important texts on conflict and strategy emerging from the Japanese warrior culture. Originally written not only for men-at-arms, they are explicitly intended to symbolize processes of struggle and mastery in all concerns and walks of life. The Book of Five Rings was written in 1643 by Miyamoto Musashi, undefeated dueler, masterless samurai, and independent teacher. The Book of Family Traditions on the Art of War was written in 1632 by Yagyu Munenori. That's how I'm going with it for now. Victorious warrior, mentor of the shogun, and head of the Secret Service. Both authors were professional men-at-arms, born into a long tradition of martial culture that had ultimately come to dominate the entire body of Japanese policy and society. Their writings are relevant not only to members of the ruling military caste, but also to leaders in other professions as well as people in search of individual mastery in whatever their chosen path. Might need to give that one a little, let's see. All right, individual path, mastery in whatever their chosen path. See, you're already starting to see a little of why this side quest is chosen for us. The Book of Five Rings and the Book of Family Traditions are in the Art of War are both written in Japanese rather than the literary Chinese customary in elite bureaucratic, religious, and intellectual circles in Japan at that time. The Japanese in which they are written, furthermore, is relatively uncomplicated and quite free of the subtle complexities of classical high court Japanese. Although the crudity of Musashi's syntax and morphology make for a clumsy reading. Nevertheless, the basic simplicity and deliberate clarity of both works make them accessible to a wide and varied audience. The rise and empowerment of the samurai class in Japan may be seen in the two terms used to refer to its members, samurai and bushi. The word samurai comes from the Japanese verb sabarao. I think that's what it is, which means to serve as to attend. The word bushi is Sino-Japanese and means armed gentry. The word samurai was used by other social classes, while the warriors referred to themselves by the more dignified term bushi. Hey. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Oh, you're fine. Oh, you're fine. Alrighty. The original samurai were attendants of nobles. In time, their functions expanded to the administration, policing, and defense of the vast estates of the nobles, who were mostly absentee landlords. Eventually, the samurai demanded and won a greater share of the wealth and political power that the nobles had called their own. Ultimately, the military paragovernment of the shoguns, known as the bakufu, or tent government, overshadowed the imperial organization and dominated the whole country. Musashi and Yagyu lived in the founding era of the Third Tent Government, which lasted from the beginning of the 17th century through the middle of the 19th century. While inheriting the martial traditions of its predecessors, this Third Tent Government differed notably in certain respects. The first tent government was established in eastern Japan near the end of the 12th century and lasted for nearly 150 years. The warriors of this time were descendants of noble houses, many of whom had honed their martial skills for generations in warfare against the Ainu people in eastern Japan, which I learned recently that's the, and maybe, shit, what I learned could have been wrong. I don't think so. This person seemed like they knew what they were talking about. The Ainu are the indigenous people of Japan and I can't remember. I think she said part of Korea as well. As the tent government was seated in Kamakura, a small town near modern Tokyo, this period of Japanese history is commonly called the Kamakura era. The second tent government supplanted the first in 1338. The warrior class had expanded and become more differentiated by this time, with lesser and thinner genealogical ties to the ancient aristocracy. The shoguns of this period established their tent government in Kyoto, the old imperial capital, and tried to establish high culture among the new samurai elite. This period of Japanese history is commonly called the Ashikaga era, after the surname of the shoguns, or the Muromachi era, after the name of the outlying district of Kyoto, in which the tent government was located. To understand Japanese history and culture, it is essential to realize that no government ever united the whole country until the Meiji Restoration. I think that's how it was said. It might have been Meiji, but I think it was like a restoration of 1868. So think about that for a sec. Because that is also what I learned in this class. I did this, it was a class recently about Shinto. And there was a little bit of this information just kind of around the history of Japan. And that, yes, this I'm really trying to, I think it actually been Meiji, the Meiji Restoration. Maybe that was how. Anyhow, no government ever united the whole country until then. So that's not even a full 200 years ago. All right. So anyhow, the imperial government had always ruled the whole land in theory, but never in fact, which was also what was said in that class. that this kind of more was like solidifying it. The imperial house had never really been more than a center of powerful factions competing with other powerful factions, even when everyone recognized the ritual and political status of the emperor in theory. Direct imperial rule only reached a portion of the land. As this is true of the imperial house, so it is also true of the military governments. The reign of the shoguns was always complicated and mitigated by the very nature of the overall Japanese power structure. The rule of the Kamakura tent government was not absolute. That of the Muromachi tent government even less. Separatism, rivalry, and civil warfare marked the 15th and 16th centuries. By this time, known as the era of the warring states, the way of war was open to anyone who could obtain arms by any means. Lower class samurai rose up to overthrow the upper class samurai, and Japan was plunged into chaos. It was not until the latter part of the 16th century that a series of hegemons emerged with strategy and power sufficient to move dramatically toward unification. The third tent government was built on the achievements of those hegemons. Within the context of traditional Japanese society, the founder of the third shogunate was an upstart and an usurper. Aware of this, he set out to establish a most elaborate system of checks and controls to ensure the impossibility of such an event ever happening again. Moving his capital, oh goodness. Moving his capital again to eastern Japan, away from the heartland, the ancient aristocracy and imperial regime, the new shogun disarmed the peasants and disenfranchised the samurai class, removing all warriors from the land and settling them in castle towns. This period of Japanese history is commonly known as the Tokugawa era, after the surname of the shoguns, or the Edo period, after the new name of the new capital city now called Tokyo. Tokugawa Japan was divided into more than 200 baronies, which were classified according to their relationship to the Tokugawa clan. The barons were controlled by a number of methods, including regulation of marriage and successorship, movement of territories, and an elaborate hostage system. Oh, jeez. The baronies were obliged to minimize their contingents of warriors, resulting in a large number of unemployed samurai known as ronin, or wanderers. Many of the disenfranchised samurai became school teachers, physicians, or priests. Some continued to practice martial traditions and to teach them to others. Some became hooligans and criminals, eventually to constitute one of the most serious social problems of the later Tokugawa period. Certain differences, both technical and philosophical, between the Book of Five Rings and the Book of Family Traditions on the Art of War stem from the fact that Miyamoto Musashi was a masterless samurai pursuing a career as a dueler, and an independent teacher of martial arts, while Yagyu Munenori was a distinguished war veteran and a servant of the central military government. So they're kind of, this is why it's important to read the forewords, read the prefaces, read all of this stuff, even if it can be, this one I don't think is really so boring, but it's just not what the main book is, you'll see. Anyhow, though, it's still obviously very important because it's painting the picture of not just the history in Japan, but what life would have been like for these two specific gentlemen who wrote these books, and why they are different in the ways they are, but I guess where there would be some overlap, potentially. So the Book of Five Rings, the more properly titled in English, The Book of Five Spheres. Miyamoto Musashi's work is devoted to the art of war as a purely pragmatic enterprise. Musashi decries empty showmanship and commercialization in martial arts, focusing attention on the psychology and physics of lethal assault and decisive victory as the essence of warfare. His scientifically aggressive, thoroughly ruthless approach to military sciences, while not universal among Japanese martialists, represents a highly concentrated characterization of one particular type of samurai warrior. Although a vast body of legend grew up around his dramatic exploits, little is known for certain about the life of Miyamoto Musashi. What he says of himself in the Book of Five Rings is the primary source of historical information. He killed a man for the first time when he was 13 years old, for the last time when he was 29. At some point, he apparently gave up using a real sword, but continued to inflict mortal wounds on his adversaries until the end of his fighting career. The last 3 decades of Musashi's life were spent refining and teaching his military science. It is said that he never combed his hair, never took a bath, never married, never made a home, never fathered children. Although he also took up cultural arts, as indeed he recommends to everyone. Musashi himself basically pursued an ascetic warrior's path to the end. Born into strife, raised in mortal combat, ultimately witness to a transition to peacetime policy on a scale unprecedented in the history of his nation. Miyamoto Musashi abandoned an ordinary life to exemplify and hand on 2 essential elements of ancient martial and strategic traditions. The first of these basic principles is keeping inwardly calm and clear, even in the midst of violent chaos. The second is not forgetting about the possibility of disorder in times of order. As a warrior of 2 very different worlds, a world of war and a world of peace, Musashi was obliged to practice both of these fundamental aspects of the warrior's way in a most highly intensified manner, lending to his work a keenness and a ferocity that can be hardly surpassed. Now, the book of, and also in this front part, there wasn't a whole lot I highlighted because the main book has so much of it, but even still, it's good because right when some of the stuff's in here a couple times, as we know, best not ignore it. Best even make it extra loud and clear for the people in the back. Okay. Okay, so much. Better double check right there, and then we're gonna go. The first of these basic principles is keeping inwardly calm and clear, even in the midst of violent chaos. The second, oh boy. The second is not forgetting about the possibility of disorder in times of order. And then as a warrior of 2 very different worlds. A world of war and a world of peace. Oh yeah. Cool. All right. The Book of Family Traditions on the Art of War. The life of Yagyu Munenori, 1571 to 1646, contrasts sharply with that of Miyamoto Musashi. Even though both men were professional warriors of the same age, Yagyu received training in martial arts from his father and became the teacher of Tokugawa Hidetada in 1601, when he was barely 30 years old. The Tokugawa tent government was established 2 years later, and Hidetada became the second shogun. In 1605, Yagyu Munenori was now the official Shogunkei Haiho Shihan, or martial arts teacher, to the family of the shoguns. Yagyu subsequently distinguished himself in battle in the still unsettled early years of the new tent government. In one famous incident, when the shogun was unexpectedly ambushed, Yagyu personally cut down 7 of the attackers with his killing sword. More and more of the barons and their brothers and sons were now seeking entry into the new shadow school of Yagyu, now a famous warrior and master swordsman. In spite of his distinguished military career, Yagyu writes of himself that he did not realize the deeper meanings of martial arts until he was already past 50 years old. Miyamoto Musashi, it will be noted, made a similar remark, even though he had been undefeated in his youthful fighting career. Like Musashi, Yagyu also wrote his book on martial arts late in life, after much reflection on his experiences. The Book of Family Traditions on the Art of War was completed in 1632, the same year that Yagyu Munenori was appointed head of the Secret Service. Under the Tokugawa tent government, the role of the Secret Service was to oversee the direct vassals of the Tokugawa family police. The castle at Edo, oversee the performance of lower level government officers, watch over official ceremonies, attend the shogun, and participate in the high court. Yagyu's writing thus reflects a far more developed social and political consciousness than Musashi's. The Book of Family Traditions on the Art of War consists of 3 main scrolls entitled The Killing Sword, The Life-Giving Sword, and No Sword. These are Zen Buddhist terms adapted to both wartime and peacetime principles of the samurai. The Killing Sword represents the use of force to quell disorder and eliminate violence. The Life-Giving Sword represents the preparedness to perceive impending problems and forestall them. No Sword represents the capacity to make full use of the resources of the environment. Zen and martial arts. Yagyu's work contains a comparatively large amount of material drawn from Zen Buddhist sources, invoking the similarity between Zen and martial arts on certain points. Yagyu himself makes it clear, however, that the correspondence between Zen and martial arts is imperfect and incomplete, and that he himself has not actually mastered Zen. Ever since the samurai took power in Japan, centuries before Musashi and Yagyu were born, Buddhists have been trying to civilize and educate the warriors. This does not mean that the samurai caste in general was successfully imbued with Buddhist enlightenment, or even with a Buddhist spirit. One prominent reason for this was that the Buddhists were kept busy not only trying to civilize the samurai, but also trying to clean up after them and their follies. Buddhism was burdened with the tasks of burying the dead, taking in and raising the many children orphaned by war or poverty or cast off as bastards, and sheltering abused and abandoned wives. The relationship between Zen and the samurai, therefore, in the relationship between Zen and the samurai, therefore, the teacher should not be assessed by the level of the student. If martial arts were really considered the highest form of study in Japan, as has been suggested by some apologists, Zen masters would have been the students of the warriors, and not the other way around. The prolonged domination of Japan by the martial caste was an anomaly in human affairs, as reflected by its discord with both native Japanese and Greater East Asian socio-political ideas. Because of the way martial rule was established by power, it was fated to bend social and philosophical ideas to its own purposes, rather than submit itself completely to the judgment and guidance of the traditional religions and philosophies it professed to uphold. All right, cool. We did it. Congratulations. We made it through those couple intros. So, when I see you again, we will begin Miyamoto Musashi's Book of Five Rings. And after rereading that intro, yeah, we might as well probably hop on in for the book on the art of the tradition of war. That's what it's called, right? Something like that. Art of traditional war. Yeah, that's what it was. Family traditions. Book on family traditions of the art of war. Fabulous, fabulous. Cool, we're gonna love it. We're gonna have a lot of fun. I'm excited for you all to try this book out. Book of Five Rings. Oh yeah, there is the little preface, but it's just a couple pages. Sweet. I will see you guys for the beginning of Miyamoto Musashi's Book of Five Rings. Thank you for joining me for this session. This has been Jay Baldell and my beautiful, beautiful kitty cat. Much love to you. Enjoy the rest of your day, evening, whatever you got going on. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe too. Don't forget that part. Oh, some days I do a little better than others, but today I did it. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.